2 weeks ago, I preached all the masses about racism and about the violent protests happening in our streets in America. This weekend, I'm preaching all the masses about a preeminent issue here for us Kansans, protecting the unborn in our state. I want to take a minute to review what's happened in our state. So this past April 2019, our Kansas Supreme Court claimed to have discovered a right to abortion in our 1859 Kansas Constitution. This ruling now positions Kansas along New York as one of the most radical pro-abortion states in America. Prior to this ruling, our state's abortion rate had been reduced by 50%. Pro-life efforts have made significant headway in recent decades here in Kansas. We passed bans on partial birth abortion and live dismemberment abortions. We have passed a lot of common sense pro-life legislation here in Kansas, including parental notification and banning taxpayer funding of abortions. Now, all of these pro-life laws are in jeopardy of being wiped out given this new Kansas Supreme Court ruling. Our only recourse now is to amend our state constitution. We hear that, we think, wow, that sounds difficult to amend a state constitution. But our constitution here in Kansas has been amended 97 times. Amending our Constitution is a twofold process. First, 2/3 of our state legislators must vote in favor of putting this life amendment on the ballot. And then it's up to us Kansas voters to vote to amend our Constitution here in Kansas. You may remember this past fall, 2019, we did a petition drive statewide, asking our legislators to amend our Constitution to undo this tragic Kansas Supreme Court decision. Thousands of signatures were collected statewide, and our state legislators proposed an amendment called Value Them Both. The proposed amendment to our state constitution would not abolish abortion in our state, but it will once again allow Kansans, through their elected officials, to enforce reasonable laws restricting abortion and safeguarding the health of mothers. I love the title of this amendment, Value Them Both. As a pro-life people, we do value them both. We value the life of the innocent unborn baby, but we also value the life of the mother. Abortion ultimately hurts women. As a church, we need to be a refuge for women in crisis, letting them know they're not alone. Oftentimes, women with an unplanned pregnancy feel they have nowhere to turn. And in addition, they can feel pressured by parents, a boyfriend, even a spouse to abort their child. I'm so grateful to our parishioners here at St. Michael. Back in 2018, at our Defenders Ball, we raised over $135,000 to help open the Olathe Crisis Pregnancy Center to help women. I'm also grateful for so many parishioners who dedicate time to volunteer at Advice and Aid and the Olathe and Wyandotte Crisis Pregnancy Centers. These crisis pregnancy centers are always looking for volunteers, and it can be a way that we really show that we do value them both. Now, this past February 2020, our state legislature voted on whether to put the Value Them Both amendment on the ballot. Sadly, it did not pass by a mere 4 votes. Our state legislators did not want to give Kansans a choice. This is truly sad. Here in Kansas, in the heart of America, we value life. Becoming an abortion mecca is not who we are as Kansans. In essence, our state government is silencing the will and the voice of the people. Thank goodness we are a democracy, and it's time for our voice to be heard at the ballot box. Now, I know anytime voting is mentioned in a homily or from the pulpit, it makes people a little uncomfortable. Archbishop Naumann, in his Levin column this past Friday, reminds us that since the beginning of our nation, the Catholic bishops have chosen not to endorse political candidates or parties. The Catholic Church does not tell its members how to vote. At the same time, it is the responsibility of the Church to help form the consciences of her members and to understand the principles and priorities that should guide their decisions as voters. As preachers of the gospel, we have a duty to preach on the moral issues. And then we are called to apply those moral principles and priorities of our faith when casting our ballots. Certainly, there are many moral issues to consider when voting. Archbishop Naumann created a video on voting for this election, and we have it linked to our website. We have it linked to our weekly email. I invite you to please watch it. In his video, he mentions just 3 important issues to consider when voting. First, racism. Second, he says peaceful protests are constitutional rights that need to be respected and protected. However, violent riots resulting in the deaths of innocent victims and the destruction of public monuments and private property are also grave evils. Our leaders have a responsibility to protect citizens and to preserve civil order. Finally, the Archbishop reminds us that this past November 2019, the Catholic bishops of the United States again identified the protection of unborn children as the preeminent moral priority. Because first, abortion attacks the most vulnerable and innocent. Second, abortion occurs within the family, destroying the most precious human bonds, thus harming parents. And third, the sheer number of human lives destroyed, nearly 1 million annually, adds to abortion's societal importance. August 4th is our primary election here in Kansas, but many of us will be voting early in person beginning July 20th. Become knowledgeable about candidate positions and voting records on issues with important moral implications. On our website and weekly email, we will link to the Archdiocese Pro-Life Office and the Kansas Catholic Conference, and you can find out who supported the value of them both amendment and who didn't. The Magnificat has a beautiful reflection on this Sunday's Gospel from Servant of God Elizabeth Lesueur. She ponders the question, what can be done in the face of evil and indifference by someone as obscure as I? She concludes that like the tiny mustard seed in the Gospel, if we join the smallest humble act to Jesus, the Lord can use it for great good. Pray for our state of Kansas and for our country. We've been praying at daily Mass for peace in our country, for unification, for an end to racial injustice, and for the value of them both amendment. I'll close with this. On the occasion of Mother Teresa's canonization, Pope Francis said, the modern day sin is indifference in the face of the exploitation and suffering of human people. As Edmund Burke said, the only thing necessary for evil to exist is for good people to remain silent. We cannot afford to remain indifferent as Kansas. Lives are literally at stake. Many Americans who have gone before us have made heroic sacrifices so that we can enjoy freedom as Americans. Let's exercise that freedom as Americans, as Kansans, and as Catholics by taking advantage of our right to vote. Now is the time to let our voices be heard.